Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nerdletes podcast. I'm your host Jesse, and this has been an exciting NFL Week 3. A lot of games coming down to the wire, a lot of exciting plays happening. It was really fun week to watch. I had Red Zone this week as a free preview, so I was able to watch a lot of different games, but it was really fun to watch a lot of the different action going around the league. And I'm going to talk about a few of the things that stood out to me and then kind of overall of where we sit after week 3. Obviously, this is, as of the time of filming, this is right before the Monday night game between the Eagles and the Cowboys, but everything else has been wrapped up for week 3. So obviously, let's jump right on in. So the first game up that I want to look at is the Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers, a Sunday night football game. It was a really good game, bias and all. And the Packers played really well for the most part. They had some moments where they could have probably played a little bit better. Like the defense down the stretch. I was a little disappointed, a little nervous, nerve-wracking, watching that game sometimes. But the Packers picked up, Rodgers and the offense picked up the line, did a really good job of running, blocking, and pass protection for the most part. There's rookies up front were doing really well. In they were able to get some runs, not quite as much up against a tough front line for the San Francisco defense, but the passing game was able to get going, and Rodgers was able to get back into rhythm. Devontae Adams had a good game, and there was a lot of times in the game that it felt like that they had the 49ers, it was beat, but then obviously they let him back in. They had the kick return at the end of the first half. They got him back into momentum. They scored, and they kind of cut it close, and then they took the lead. But then it came down to the end, and when they scored, obviously I'm like, ugh. I hate it, but I almost was glad that he let him score because I was almost like, just let him get in so we can get the ball back with more time. Because, if they'd stopped San Francisco on the 1 yard line or something like that, they would have just ran the clock down and probably ran it in for touchdown with no time remaining and won the game. So it actually worked out in the Packers' favor to let them score. So they had 37 seconds left, and they got the ball back at 25-yard line. And I was really nervous. Like I was sweating a little bit. It was nerve-wracking. And then the first play, Aaron Rodgers bombs it out to Devontae Adams, gets close to about the 50-yard line, and I'm like, okay, we got this. Like that one play, I was like, okay, we got this. I mean, I was still a little nervous, obviously, but I'm like, okay, we got this. And then I get a couple more plays, and the clock runs down. They go up, they spike it, and then they got a Mason Crosby coming out for the field goal. My heart was just like pounding and racing. I was nerve wracking, and I was just like, oh, don't miss, don't miss, because he's a pretty reliable kicker. He's been around for a long time, but he has missed occasionally. He had a couple years where he was a little off, but for the most part, he's been a very good, solid, dependable kicker for the Packers. But I was really nerve wracked, and as they made the field goal, I jumped up and celebrated. That was just a great ending. And to beat the 49ers, they looked so smug after they scored. They thought they had it in the bag, but the Packers were able to come back and take it. And it was just a really fun game to watch. And it really just shows that I think week 1 was an anomaly for the Packers. And I think for a lot of teams, it was really an anomaly game. If you look at a couple other teams, that was a lot different in week 1 that you've seen the last couple weeks. You've seen teams kind of revert to the forms we're probably going to see for most of the season. And so while the Packers can be played tough, there's a lot of tough teams out there, and San Francisco's improved. They're healthier this year, so they're not to be taken lightly. They were 2-0, even though they weren't 2-0 against two really great teams, in my opinion, against the Eagles and the Lions. But it's still a tough team, and someone who generally matches up pretty well with the Packers, so it's always a tough game. But I was happy, especially for the Packers' run defense, just from the fact that a couple years ago they were just basically run over in both games they played, the regular season and the championship game, just run over by the defense by the 49ers running backs. And I was afraid after watching a couple of the games this year that might happen again, but I was happy that the defense stepped up in that area. I will say there was a ton of terrible calls by the refs. So many pass interference calls, so many missed calls, so many calls that shouldn't have been called. And Devontae Adams got knocked out, barely couldn't even know how he got up, and they didn't call anything. All these stupid penalties. So that was a gripe most of them against the Packers, but the 49ers got some questionable ones called their way as well. But ultimately, it was a really good game to cap off the week, and as a Packers fan, it was really great. Nerve-wracking, and I was really excited. I was really pumped, it's hard, you're trying to go to sleep, got to go to work in the morning, but you're like, oh, I'm just so pumped from watching the game, and it's like, ugh. But anyway, it was a great game, and go Pack go. Now, this is a game I want to talk about. Obviously not big, you wonder why you talking about the Jaguars. They're 0-3. First off, I was gonna say the Cardinals were one of my teams that I thought were gonna do really well, and it seemed that people don't really agree with me a lot of when I was hearing stuff at the beginning of the season that they weren't quite as high on the Cardinals as I was. And the Cardinals have played really well in the first 3 games. Their offense looks really good, and their defense has been able to step up as well. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence has been a little turnover happy. He's a rookie though, so he's getting in rhythm, so that helped a little bit. But this game, really, what I wanted to talk about and wanted to show you guys is this one play. I'm just going to show a quick clip. You probably know, you might have seen this play, but it's a really cool play, and I just want to show you. This is why I wanted to talk about this game, so it's pretty cool.
And short, Agnew brings it out of the end zone. Agnew still running. Agnew down the sideline. Agnew, touchdown Jacksonville! 109 yards, incredible!
So I just really wanted to highlight that play real quick because I was able to see that live, and it was just a really cool play because they started off as, you didn't see it in this particular clip, but Matt Prater, the kicker for the Cardinals, was going out to attempt a 68-yard field goal, which would have easily been the longest kick in NFL history. More on kicks later on, though, because we did get some more action by the kickers. A lot of good day for kickers, I think, for the most part. But anyway, so he's going out right before half to try a 68-yard field goal, and he kicked it, and it almost, from where our angle we saw, it looked like it was going to go in. It was straight down the middle. It was just a hair short, and enough for Jamal Agnew for the Jaguars to return the ball, because as you know, when you kick a field goal, if it, can be returned, like a punt or a kickoff or anything like that. And we have seen some plays where the kick was run back a couple times in NFL history. And 109 yards is the longest play you could possibly do in a game, because that's from the back of the end zone to the other end zone, 109 yards. I just stopped and watched this play, and I was just, no, I just, like, the announcer really did a good job of just conveying this excitement. Like, it's a week 3 game with Jacksonville and Arizona, but it sounded like we were in the NFC Championship game or something, because this the excitement. And I just wanted to use this moment to kind of touch on the fact that I feel like a lot of the announcers nowadays, I'm happy, they have a lot more excitement in their voice. They have a lot more enthusiasm. When I watch some of the old replays of games back in the days, not that the announcers were necessarily terrible or anything, but they seemed very professional, in the sense that they were too professional. Like, they were, and he scored a touchdown, and they go up again. Very just no excitement in their voice. And I know a lot of nowadays, it seems like a lot of announcers tend to have more of that excitement in their voice, that like, you hear them, it's just, oh my gosh, it's a touchdown, oh my goodness, 109 yards. Like, that is so cool to just, it makes the experience so much better when you have an announcer who does that. I really enjoy when they do that, and a lot of times, even today, when announcers are just so, oh, and you scored a touchdown, it like takes the fun out of it. So I really enjoyed that just from the announcer. I don't remember who was announcing the game, but that was just a really cool moment. And even though the Jags ended up losing the game, it was just a really cool play. And I just wanted to talk about that because that was a really fun play to watch. And just getting to listen to it again, and the excitement and the fans and everything, it's really cool. And it was really a cool play. So the other game, speaking of kicks, we go to Detroit and Baltimore, and we had another kicker who was able to kick a really long field goal, but this time he made it. And that kicker was Justin Tucker, who actually is a very most accurate kicker in NFL history, but he actually missed, I believe it was like a front of 49-yard field goal earlier in the game, which is rare because he kind of shanked it to the right, I believe. But he got another chance at the end of the game. They were able to get the ball down midfield, wherever, I don't know, it was a 66-yard field goal. And even though they attempted the 68-yard field goal in the Arizona Jacksonville game, this one was 66 yards, but he made it, and this was the record that topped. I don't even remember what it was. I think they might have. I think there was a 64 because there was a long time it was 63 was like the longest, but I believe someone else had gotten it to like 64 or 5. So this was the longest kick in NFL history, and it was really a cool kick just from the fact that it went and hit the crossbar, bounced up and in to the back of the net, and that was just a really cool play to like have it just hit and doink and like go into the back of the net. So that was just a really fun otherwise, I mean, the Lions, like, they just have to be like crushed after having these kind of losses that they have. You feel like in the games that they've played this year, they've had chances at some points. Like the first game, they were getting blown out, but they did manage to get some momentum at the end and make it close. And in the Green Bay game last week, they were able to play really well in the first half, and they were actually up by 3 points at halftime, but then mostly got shut out of the second half. So they're a young team and they're growing, and I didn't expect much from the Lions, but they've been playing some teams pretty tough because Baltimore had a tough loss in week 1 and then beat the Chiefs last week. So the Ravens were able to barely survive in this one, not scoring a lot of points, but they did get a little bit of magic from their kicker at the end. Speaking of the team that beat them in week 1, I did it again, the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know when I'm going to stop doing that, but we'll see. The Raiders and the Dolphins, it didn't look like it was going to be as close as it was, but the Dolphins were able to come back at the end and score, get the 2-point conversion, and go to overtime, where they ended up losing, unfortunately for them. But it was a good game. Both teams were able to kick a field goal in the overtime period, so basically you get for the rules of the overtime, you get one possession unless the first team scores a touchdown or a defensive touchdown or score like a safety. But if the first team goes down and kicks a field goal, the other team at least gets a chance to get a possession, basically. They changed those rules a few years ago. So both teams were able to kick a field goal, but the Raiders ended up getting the next field goal and were able to win this game. And the Raiders, surprisingly, are 3-0. And like I mentioned in my preview and predictions video, I didn't think that highly of the Raiders. I thought they were going to be a very average team, but they have surpassed my expectations so far. They had 2 really good wins against playoff teams. They beat Baltimore in overtime in a good game, and then they beat Pittsburgh last week, and a really close game against another playoff contender from a year ago in Miami, even though their starting quarterback was out, but Brissett played pretty good in Tua's absence. So I won't say that they were completely without any help on the Dolphins side. So the Raiders are at least tied for first in this division, and it's really the couple teams that are in front of the AFC West are not the ones that people probably would have predicted to be at the top of the AFC West going into things this point in the season. But going on, we'll see how they do. But the Raiders have played and exceeded my expectations, and I just want to say that, I might have got it wrong. We'll see how it goes. Like, the teams can start off high and then come crashing down. We just don't know. But I feel like now that we've gotten a few games in, we're starting to see how teams are going to play for the most of the season, like who's going to be able to step up above the rest. And the Raiders look like they're going to be in contention at least, if not one of the threats to the AFC, but we'll see how it goes. They're in a tough division the way it's going so far, and that's not even counting the Chiefs, who are at the bottom, and the Chiefs are still a threat even though the rest of the division is playing pretty well. So who knows what's going to happen in this one. And speaking of the rest of this division, the Chargers and the Chiefs, another game that I was able to check out some yesterday. The Chiefs did not look like themselves in the first half. They had 3 turnovers in that first half. They ended up having 4 overall, I believe. But the Chiefs just didn't look right. They had the fumble. by Edwards-Helaire, who was actually the same player who fumbled the week prior in the end of the Ravens game, which got the Ravens back the ball to win the game. And he ended up fumbling, and all these turnover, and Patrick Mahomes threw a couple of picks. And they were, the Chargers looked like a really good team. They had a lot of close games last year, the Chargers did, but they just weren't able to win them a lot of the times. And even though Justin Herbert played really well, he won Offensive Rookie of the Year, they just couldn't finish the games. But this year they have. And they had a gutsy call on fourth down. They got it, the penalty to keep the drive going, and they ended up scoring. And that's what won them the game at the end. They were able to stop Kansas City, and the Chiefs are now 1-2 going into week 4. And you don't think 2 losses are that much, but 2 losses out of 3 games for a team like Kansas City is a big deal, especially considering the other teams in the division are all 2 or 3 win teams already. And even though I thought teams like the Chargers would be a possible playoff contender or play pretty good, I did not think any of these teams were going to challenge the Chiefs for the division, and now it looks like they might be challenged by all of them. Denver, we'll talk about them in a moment, even could be contending. We don't know. But the Chiefs just didn't look, just looked off. That's why I can put, they just looked off yesterday, and I just couldn't put my finger on what is quite plaguing them. Maybe they're being a little sloppy with the ball. Maybe they're just not quite synced yet. I don't know, but they just looked a little off. And even though they've played pretty well, enough to win all the games they've been in, they just haven't been able to put it together in the last couple games to finish it off. Now we take a quick look at the NFL standings through 3 weeks. As I mentioned before, the Eagles and Cowboys game hasn't happened yet at the time of this recording, so they're still sitting at 1-1. But these are the official NFL standings as of right now. And starting at the NFC North, the Bengals are leading the division, tied with Cleveland and Baltimore. But the Bengals have had a couple impressive wins. They had the overtime win in week 1 against Minnesota, an off game against Chicago, and then a game where they beat down the Steelers pretty good, 24-10. And the Bengals, I thought, might be improved, but they may be improved more than I thought. And this also leads to my theory that the Steelers are more overrated than a lot of people thought they were. The Steelers, this could very well be the bottom of this division, in my opinion. The Bengals have shown me that they can play well against the Steelers. They won last year in a game that the Steelers were needing. So, that wasn't just a throwaway game at the end or anything. And the Bengals, I don't think they're going to win the division, but I think they're going to be a lot better than I thought they might be. And I think the Steelers could even drop to the bottom of this division. The Ravens and Browns are both picking up the pace, and I feel like they're going to be the ones that are going to be competing for the crown. But the Bengals are not to be discounted the way they've played through the first 3 weeks. The AFC South is mostly the Titans' division to lose. I mean, I didn't think the Texans or Jaguars were going to be in contention for this division, but the Colts, a lot of people thought they might be. I was down on the Colts. I thought that due to the injuries and just the way I was feeling given going into the season, I didn't think the Colts were going to be as good as last year. And they started 0-3, so my thoughts seem to be correct so far. So the Titans really, even though they may not have played super well in some of these games, I don't believe that they're going to be the Titans look like this is their division to lose. And even though they might not have played super great in every game, they were able to get a good win against Seattle in week 2. And that will be division win, which is always good. So this is definitely their division to lose. Whether they'll be a top AFC team is yet to be seen, but definitely I don't think there's any threat right now in the division. The AFC East, the Bills played really well against Washington, and this looks like also their division to lose. Miami and New England, I feel like are both right behind them. I feel like the Dolphins could be a threat, but they lost pretty handily to the Bills last week, and they had some injuries with the quarterback, so I don't know if the Dolphins are going to be top. I still think they might be a playoff team, but I don't think they're going to threat for the division. And the Patriots, who are actually going to be going against the big Tom Brady comeback next week, where he's coming back to New England, I just feel like that's not going to be a very close game. I feel like the Buccaneers are going to be able to win pretty handily. I'm not feeling good about the Patriots. I said originally I thought they might be a playoff team. I put them in as my 7th seed. Through 3 weeks, they had one win against the Jets. But other than that, I don't know that I've seen a lot from the Patriots, and I'm afraid that they're going to get blown out. Even though it'd be cool to see Tom Brady go back and get beat by the Patriots, I would love to see that. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. And then when we mentioned the AFC West, I talked about them. The Raiders and Broncos are both 3-0, leading this division. The Chargers right behind them at 2-1. But sitting at the bottom are the Kansas City Chiefs, who usually the top team in the AFC the last few years, and they have lost 2 of their first 3 games and are falling behind in a division that seems pretty competitive. The Raiders, I just talked about, I feel like they have had good wins and they're going to be a threat. The Broncos, I was really down on the Broncos going into the season, and I'm still skeptical because their first 3 wins of this season were against teams that were not super great. They beat the Jets, who have not played well this season. They beat the Jaguars, who are still a rebuilding team, and they beat the New York Giants, who have yet to win a game. So I would temper your expectations for Denver. Still more impressive. Their offense has played a lot better. Teddy Bridgewater seems to be thriving pretty well so far in that offense, and their defense is playing pretty good too. So obviously they are much better than I gave them credit for, but I would temper the expectations because they have not beat a really good team yet. And when they play a really good team, that will be the test of whether the Broncos are for real or not. Moving over to the NFC side, the NFC North, the Packers, they got back to form. There's still some issues, there's still some injuries, so they still need to keep working on things. But I thought week 1 was a fluke. I thought for both teams, honestly, I didn't think the Saints were that good, and I don't think the Packers were that bad. And so far, that seems to be right so far. And the other teams in the division, obviously division teams match up pretty well with each other, but I feel like the Packers are pretty safe as long as they keep a nice little cushion. I don't feel like the Bears and the Vikings or the Lions are going to be able to pick up the pace. Apologies, I had a couple typos when I put the Lions at 1-2. Don't want to give them too many wins now. But as I was saying, the rest of the team in the NFC North, I don't feel like are going to be a real threat unless someone picks up the pace. The Vikings have been in their games, and they've been one of the better teams in the NFC North the last couple years. But I don't know that they're going to get enough wins to challenge the Packers yet. It will be interesting to see when they play the Packers how they fare, because sometimes they match up with the Packers, but overall wins may not be enough to catch them. The NFC South, the Panthers, with a surprising 3-0 start for some. And a lot of people are saying they haven't played really tough teams, but they did get a really big win over the Saints a week ago. And 3-0 is 3-0. And it's the first time they've been 3-0 since 2015, when they went 15-1 and all the way to the Super Bowl. So the Panthers looking up. Sam Darnold playing good in the offense. Christian McCaffrey hurt in the Houston game, and he's going to be out, and that's really going to hurt them. J.C. Horn on the defensive side, we don't know how long he's going to be out. So those are big injuries, and injuries will be a big factor for them going forward. But like I predicted, they will be at least in contention for a possible wild card, and if they keep this up, maybe even the division. Both of their games against the Buccaneers are at the tail end of the season, so if they can keep this kind of pace up, those games could be really huge and possibly for the division. The Buccaneers had a loss yesterday against the Rams, and this really kind of goes with I was saying how I think the Rams are my number 2 team behind the Packers when I was going into the season, and they beat the Bucks. People were really high on the Bucks after 2 weeks. I felt that they were not needed at that kind of praise. They had a really good game against Dallas. The Dallas played them pretty good, so I'll give them that win. The next week they beat Atlanta. I don't take much stock into them beating Atlanta like they did. They should beat Atlanta. So, they had a pretty good win and a win that they should have won, game they should have won. But when they came up against the top talent, they lost. So I think that the Buccaneers, maybe they need to get their stride again, but with all the starters they're returning and all the expectations, you think they would be able to play, they could go into Los Angeles and win that game. Now, granted, it's early in the season, and they had a little bit of struggles early in last season, and they were able to pick it up on the stretch. That could be the case here, but just not quite as high in the Bucks as a lot of people are. The Saints, I feel like, are overrated. They had a fluke win, and they won. The Packers had a bad day. The Saints had a good day. I'll give it to them. But it was a fluke because the next week they were crushed, and this week they played a New England team that just isn't that talented. So when they go up against another good team, that will be the test. So as we're still trying to see teams, go through different talent levels, play different teams, and get a rhythm and see kind of where they're going to end up during the season. I don't feel like we've gotten a good read on the Saints yet, but I don't think I'm as high on them. Moving down to the Nfc East, like I said, we got a game tonight between Eagles and the Cowboys, so it'll be tough to say who's going to be in top first. I will predict, I think that the Cowboys win this game. I still think the Cowboys are going to win just because of the weakness of this division. I think that the Washington football team can possibly challenge them, but they haven't showed me enough to top the Cowboys quite yet. So the Cowboys is their division to lose at this point, I think. But it will be interesting to see if the Eagles can get a win over them. Then maybe the Eagles are better than we thought they were. But did the Cowboys let them off the hook? You would know that if you... That's Denny Green press conference. Anyway. Moving on to the NFC West, a tough division. The Cardinals and Rams both sitting at 3-0 heading into week 4, with the 49ers trying to keep pace after that loss to Green Bay, and the Seahawks, surprisingly to some, sitting at 1-2. The Seahawks, I don't care for. So, the game against the Vikings, I was really hoping that they would beat each other, tie, something. But they lost, so whatever, it is what it is. But the Seahawks have lost 2 games against NFC opponents, and NFC opponents with teams that could very well be a wild card potential. Losing those games against those NFC opponents is going to be big heading into the end of the season in a tough division that at this point I don't feel like they would win, with the Cardinals and Rams both sitting up top and the 49ers also being a threat to the Seattle Seahawks. So a tough division. I still feel like with the Rams and Cardinals playing this week, that's going to be an interesting game. I feel like that is going to have huge implications for who wins this division, not only for tiebreakers, but just seeing how the two teams match up. So the Cardinals are technically ahead of the Rams right now, but that could change next week. And I still feel like the Rams are slightly better than the Cardinals, and I feel like the Rams will still win this division, but like I mentioned in my preview show, I feel like the Cardinals are going to be a top wildcard team who has a record of a division winner, but just because of being in the same division as the Rams, will be forced to be a wildcard team, but still one of my top NFC teams going into this season. So that was kind of just my look at the week of NFL action this week. It was a really fun week. A lot of exciting plays and exciting games. I'm happy, obviously, more than the last time I was able to talk to you guys, because the Packers had a really great win. Like I said, it was super exciting. Getting that field goal at the end, Mason Crosby, I was pumped. That Jamal Agnew kick return touchdown, that was cool. Justin Tucker getting the 66-yard field goal. So it was just a lot of fun action this weekend. But anyway, thank you all for watching. I didn't get to do one last week, but I want to try to keep doing this every week, just kind of talk about my thoughts on what's going on in the NFL week by week. But anyway, you guys let me know what you think. Were those plays cool? What was your favorite part of this week? Were you hyped for some of these games? Is your team doing well? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe to the channel, help us grow the channel so we can get more views, get more reach out there, and see if this channel can grow. And I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.